All right, James, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm doing well. Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So I think I first came across your content like 3 or 4 years ago, just as I was getting more into the world of pricing and optimization of my Airbnbs. It seemed like there wasn't a lot of good content or knowledgeable people in the space talking about some of like the nuts and bolts, nitty gritty stuff. There was so much fluff out there that I really resonated with your stuff, and we'll link all of it below. But I think that's why people resonate with it as well, and it continues to do well, and you help people with it. But would love to just hear from your perspective before we get into all that of like how you got into the world of not just real estate, but more into like the detail of it. You could talk through your first property or so, but then how you kind of fell into that like niche of software and operations and all that, which is what we really like to focus on the show.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I actually didn't start out that way in the business. Like I had a business partner when I first got started managing properties on Airbnb, and I basically was more so like the business growth role, and he took on more of the operations role while we were growing it. But I think it's also honestly been like a combination of two things that have had me go more into the operation side. One is just like a personality shift where I've gotten more introverted and more kind of operations and system minded over the years. And then second is ever since I started coaching people on it, one of the cool things is like with with coaching people, you're kind of always going through that same process again and again and again and again. And that was always really fun for me. Like one of the things that I got a little bit bored with in the actual like operation side of the business was that it became pretty status quo at a certain point of like things are running smoothly. What do I do now? And so with coaching, I kind of get to like start back again from square one with someone and go through the whole process of like setting it up and optimizing it. And each time you do that, it's like you just notice little things you can improve and improve and improve. And so I think that that's been a big part of why over the years I've gotten like really dialed in on like the small stuff that makes a big difference because it's just gone through so many different iterations of refinement over the years.
That's really interesting. I mean, I know other coaches or people that help people get into real estate, and they they help people, but they still don't do it at a detailed level that you do. So I think you like articulate it really well, and it just clicks. So it's cool to hear. Um, can you give us an overview of what your current real estate experience or portfolio looks like now?
Yeah, so right now I've got two properties of my own that I own. They're basically one's a was it a 5 bedroom and a 6 bedroom place, I believe it is, and they're basically like cottage properties up kind of north of Toronto in like a weekend getaway type of destination. And those are both set up as short-term rentals. Everything's running smooth. Like I don't even literally can't even remember how many bedrooms they are because I don't visit them ever. But yeah, that basically is nice and stable. And then the property management I got started with about like 8 or 9 years ago now, and then actually sold my share of that company a few years after starting it with that business partner. I sold it to over to him. And so yeah, basically now I don't manage properties for anyone anymore, just my own properties that are in my portfolio.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So I want to talk about the management portion. People
Mm.
might be shocked to hear that you don't live near the properties, spend a lot of time with the properties, um, even just jokingly like, oh, is it a 5 or 6 bedroom? But can you give us a high level and then we'll dig into it, like the operations? Like, how does that work from distance or without you being at the property all the time, which a lot of people online and on Facebook groups and you talk to, like, they can only operate their property because they're there all the time.
Yeah, I mean that it was just like a no, it was like a stopping point for me. Like I travel a ton and I love travel. It's like one of the things I really enjoy doing. So for me it was like just not a total non-negotiable that I had to be able to run them from anywhere in the world. And so that means that I've had to do a bunch in the way of systemization and then also have a good team because there does need to be people actually physically on the ground managing the property to a certain extent. So basically, what I've got is we've got at one of the properties, we've got a kind of all-star cleaner who has a couple people on her team, and she actually does the maintenance as well, and does like the hot tub maintenance, and just kind of does the whole 9 yards. So that's a bit of an anomaly. We kind of lucked out with her. And then the other property, it's further away, so it's kind of outside of her scope. So there we've got one person doing cleaning, we've got one person doing maintenance, and then basically the way it works is the cleaner goes by like a normal cleaner would. The maintenance person goes by once a week during turnovers, and they basically do like a full check of the property. And they're the one that would also go by if anything like really urgent came up that the guest needed support with during their stay. And then remotely, I also have my executive assistant, Carol. She basically does all the kind of portfolio management, I call it. So she's the one that does some guest communication when needed. And then she does kind of the triaging between the different team members. So if our cleaner says, hey, we need more of this, she's the one that orders it on Amazon, communicates with the maintenance person, that kind of stuff. And she actually does that fully remote as well. She's not local to the area, but we do have those few boots on the ground kind of people.
Awesome. Could you talk to how you found those local people, those great people? It's something that people struggle with. How you found them, and then also any tips you have for people that are maybe looking to build out their team in a market.
Yeah, I honestly highly recommend doing it the way that I did it because I went through a few different iterations of this. And what I found was that if you find people that are easy to find, everyone else has also found them. Like if you go on Google and you search for like cleaning teams or maintenance people in your area, the top person that comes up on Google has a ton of business because like they're the top person on Google. And so that means that number one, they're going to charge higher rates because as demand goes up, they're going to raise their rates. Number two, it means that they're going to be a lot more picky with who they bring on as clients, meaning that they're going to be a lot less open, generally speaking, to like integrate with your systems, integrate with your calendar. They're going to want things done their specific way so that their business is kind of as efficient as possible on their end. And number three, you're very replaceable to them. Like if you leave as a client, it's not a huge deal for them because they've got a really good web presence. So the harder people are to find, generally the better they are for like long term being a good kind of partner in your business. So I like to go. There's a couple like good ways to find people that are hard to find. One is word of mouth. So anytime I buy a new property, I ask around the neighborhood, and so like we basically there's a another Airbnb on the street that I purchased. I asked them who to talk to. They said, oh well, there's this lady Edith down the road that's done some cleaning. And then I talked to Edith, and she goes, "Oh, here's the guy that's around the corner. He does the snow plowing, and I think he does a little bit of maintenance too." And then Edith referred me to another cleaner, and then my other cleaner, and so I just get like a kind of a web of referrals going, and you can try different people out that way and go that route. The other method that I've used that we use to find our other cleaner for the other property that's kind of the like all around rock star was that was through Facebook groups. So we went on like a local buy and sell or like community Facebook group for that area, Kawartha Lakes. And then I just searched for the keyword cleaners and I scrolled down through the different posts and there was like a post from like 4 months prior to that. There was someone going, hey, any good cleaning companies in the area? Someone tagged Lisa. It was like real hard to find her business online, but it exists. Find it, call her up, and then lo and behold, she ends up being a rock star. So I find that if you put an extra couple hours into that initial like sourcing of people, you will save yourself a ton of time in the long run.
Something that you made me think of with that is it is good to spend time at the property when it's being set up and just networking locally. Like
Yeah,
there's people that you will never find online that
yeah,
are real people that have a physical presence. So like, you just reminded me you go into like a coffee shop and you have a conversation with someone, hey, like, and you just tell people you're looking for. You ask people, oh, my mom actually, she's looking for work, or my sister, like. So it's such a good reminder that you said that. Yeah, if we're doing it from distance, Facebook groups and getting nitty gritty and digging into them, awesome. But such a good point that you made on that of just getting a little bit of like local grunt work done can go such a long way. So I love that you said that. Um,
yeah.
how about your executive assistant? That's something that a lot of people listening to this or just in the communities now like are curious if they have enough work for an executive assistant or how to find a good one or can I afford one? So we'd just love to hear your take on how you found yours and how you think about that.
Yeah. This is another one where I've gone through a bunch of different iterations of it, and I found a solution that works really, really well. It's a site called Dynamite Jobs. And so I'm part of this like community of entrepreneurs called the Dynamite Circle. And then like that, the people that run that community, they started this job board called Dynamite Jobs. I think they actually changed the name now to, it might be like remotejobs.com, but I'm sure it would come up if people just look online for Dynamite Jobs.
Hmm.
But basically, it's all online entrepreneurs that are looking to hire people. So everyone that is like a job applicant is looking for remote work, and they all have that kind of like more startup-y type mentality, but not like a tech-based start, like a venture-backed startup where they expect really high salaries. Like it's a lot of just remote workers who are pretty like lifestyle focused. It's a really, really good job board. I've just had way better success because I've tried finding people through like onlinejobs.ph. I've tried finding people on Upwork. I've tried finding people on Fiverr, and it's pretty hit or miss. I found that specifically in um, kind of like throughout Europe and South America is probably the best place to reliably hire from, because when you get into like super low wage areas like the Philippines, it can be like, number one, your time zones are going to be completely reversed. Number two, the language barrier is probably going to be pretty significant. And number three, there's just a very, very different culture around work. And so, like, if you talk to enough people that have hired virtual assistants in the Philippines, especially, they'll all tell you that the way they quit is just not showing up for work. They just don't. They just like one day you'll just never hear from them again. So stuff like that, it just becomes really annoying. So I found that hiring in Europe and South America, you'll pay a little bit more, you'll get a lot more in terms of like reliability, quality of the person that you're working with. Um, so that's basically my process for finding the person. And yeah, like I think so. My executive assistant right now works 20 hours a week with me, so it's part time. The nice thing is she has a another full time job, and then does this alongside of it. So it's kind of the best of both worlds if you can find something like that, because they're kind of available at like all throughout the day, because her other job is an online job as well. But I just didn't have enough work for like a full 40-hour work week. So I think most people are probably ready for one earlier than they would expect. And it's a bit more affordable than I think a lot of people would expect. And if you do it right, you can get someone that is like Carol is smarter than me in a lot of ways. Like it's not like someone that I have to tell her exactly what to do every single time and she just kind of presses the buttons. Like she is very, very competent, very, very capable, and like makes my life way, way easier.
That's awesome. Just two follow-up questions. One, is she American?
No, she's down in Honduras.
She's oh, Honduras. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And the 20 hours per week, this is something I've heard different takes on lately. Is that they have a dedicated 20-hour schedule with you, or they just work throughout the week and 20 hours add up throughout the week?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just she works throughout the week for about 20 hours. And I think one thing that I like, you basically want to make your role as attractive as possible, right? Because ultimately, like, there's a lot of different opportunities that anyone has. And so one of the benefits that I have is like, there's going to be some weeks where there's 20 hours of work. And like, frankly, when she was getting started as well, there were some weeks where there was like 25, 30 hours per week. But a lot of the weeks, there's also just like 5 hours a week. And so I don't view it as like I'm paying for 20 hours. I need to get 20 hours worth of work out of this person every single week. I just view it as like I'm paying for this amount so that I don't have to worry about stuff. So that like these things are all taken care of. As long as that's taken care of, I don't care if she gets done in 5 hours a week, I'm stoked. Like that's great, fantastic. So I think having that mentality where it can be really like there's a lot of flexibility in the role, and you're not just like kind of burning the candle at both ends with them as much as you can, like to try to get your value out of it, then you can make it work. Because if you're going to make them work a solid 20 hours every week, and it's like, and you're paying them as low wage as you can and these different things, it's like they're just not going to like that job and they're going to leave. So there's different things that you kind of want to be negotiable on, and try to make it as good of a role as possible for them.
I guess one more follow-up question on that. Do you track hours and then pay hourly, or you just pay the same amount every month and, you have a good like rhythm?
Yeah, yeah, just pay the same amount every month. Don't do any hours tracking because, like I said, like I don't care. The only thing related to hours that I will ask Carol is how many hours are you working? When I think she's working more than 20 hours, and if she's working more than 20 hours, I go, okay, what do you need to give back to me? Like, what do we need to do to dial this back down? The only thing I'm concerned about hours wise is if she's working more than she should be.
Got it. And what tasks does she do for you in the business?
So she does basically all that portfolio management. So she has all the kind of triage and communication between the different on the ground people. She'll like apply for permits if we need permits for anything. She'll contact. She'll be the one that like if there's an emergency at the property, she's the one picking up the phone, calling the plumber, like taking care of all that stuff. Yeah, just all that kind of coordination. And then within my coaching business, she does like monthly reports for me. We do different like kind of tracking spreadsheets. She'll send out like newsletters for my properties and for the coaching business, and then just different like one-off projects that I'll have. So um, yeah, like I just wrote a new book that I'm going to be launching in the new year. And so after I wrote it, I had her do like all the formatting on it and like make it like take it from a Word document, turn it into like a proper book. So different like one-off projects like that. I try to kind of gauge and ask like what types of projects would you be really interested in? What kind of stuff do you want to learn more about and do you enjoy? And then if I have projects like that come up, then I'll get Carol to help out with them.
Gotcha. Really cool. And you might have mentioned it just before we move off. Is she also doing guest communication or mainly just vendor communication?
Guest communication as well. So we use an AI tool that I started using maybe 4 or 5 months ago that is like game changing for me. It's called Bestie AI. And I like love it. It's so good. So it's actually taking care of a lot of the guest communication now. And we turn it on autopilot on all the evenings and weekends. So it just automatically responds to like 80 to 90% of guest messages on evenings and weekends. And then it'll draft the replies for everything else. So guest communication is way, way less of a burden than it was like 6 months ago. But Carol still does fill in those gaps wherever the AI can't take care of it.
This is something we'll have to talk more about, maybe later, or maybe do a part two, or when you come talk to the group. Like, I've never heard of that tool. The only one that I'd seen that was doing that capability is something called Journey, which is like an all-in-one. It's a
Mm.
PMS, and they had actually really good AI, but um, shifting full PMS just to get one feature is wasn't worth it for us.
Yeah.
So it's Besty or IE.
Why? Yeah.
Why? Okay, cool.
I think their website, by the way, is getbestie.ai. If I'm not, there's like a get there. So if you look up Bestie AI guest communication, it's a little bit hard to find online, but they are actually really good. I've actually spent some time chatting with the founder and hanging out with their team and stuff. They're a really good team, and the tool is actually really good. I tried out maybe 4 or 5 before I landed on Bestie and was pretty much had written off AI. This guy was like, no, I don't think AI can do guest communication yet. Like, I think it's just going to need time to get there. And then found them and was like, oh, someone actually figured it out. Because a lot of them, the problem was it would send you in like this perpetual AI loop where the guests would be like, hey, where are the pots and pans? Oh, they're underneath they're in the cupboard underneath the counter right below the microwave. Let me know if they're not in there. And the guests would be like, oh, they're not in there. And it would be like, oh, well, the pots and pans are right below the counter. And it just like repeat the same thing. And there was no like stopgap to get out of that. So you'd
Ugh.
just be in this perpetual AI loop with this thing. And it was like the most infuriating thing ever. But yeah, Basti actually like did a proper job. They've got venture backing, so they've been able to like hire proper good engineers and build a really good tool for it. So it works really well.
I didn't see us go in this direction, but I do want to talk about it just for a little bit of time here because I
Yeah.
don't know anyone else that's implemented something like this yet. Is this or not? Do you think it's the future? It seems like it is not the future, it's happening. But where do you think this technology lands in, let's say, 2025, 2026? Not too far out, but in like the immediate
Yeah.
future, where do you see technology like this fitting into what you do or what like will be widely adopted?
Everywhere. Like it's crazy. There's AI tools. I went to a conference a couple weeks ago called Data and Revenue Management, DARM. It's like a big short-term rental conference, and it was pretty cool. There's a few different AI companies there. Like there's companies now that like AI tools that will, and I haven't tested these ones out, but they're out there that'll basically dynamically update your listing headline and your listing description and your like photo captions based on the time of the year and the patterns and trends that it knows like what people are looking for at that specific time of the year. So it would like know that an event is coming up and then change your headline to reflect that you're like like X amount of distance from that event venue or stuff like that. So there's really cool stuff coming out. I think um, as far as like operate like day to day, just like your status quo operations and optimization, I think a lot of that is going to be taken over by AI. And I think it's going to free up the like hosts or property managers to spend a lot more of their time focused on like guest experience, because I think that's one thing that has been kind of lacking in the short-term rental space. And I have a lot of empathy for it because like when you start hosting, there's a lot to it. Like there's a lot more than people I think like on the outside realize. And I'm sure you obviously know, and a lot of people listening will know that like there's just a lot to keep up with when you're dealing with guest communication, when you're dealing with all the operations, all the coordination yourself. Like when I first got started doing this, and like channel management software was new when I first started, like the more like modern day channel management softwares, like it was like just keeping your head above water was a lot. So like let alone trying to take time to put into like the guest experience and like trying to make each stay unique and memorable and special, and like growing the business like strategically, all that kind of stuff was like way on the back burner. Whereas now I feel like there's just so much more time to focus on that stuff now that a lot of the kind of day-to-day stuff can be automated and done with AI.
So cool. Do you have any content on YouTube about this yet, or have you not made any content about it?
Yeah, I have. I've been pretty evangelical about it because it's like genuinely the coolest tool that I've that's come out since I started like in the Airbnb space. So I put out a few videos and I've got a few more coming, just like talking about Bestie and all the stuff it can do. Because not to like make this a full on like just like let's dive into Bestie, but it is sick. It can also like it has these add-on revenue boosting features where it'll reach out to your guests when you have an orphan gap and offer them to like a discount on extending their stay. It'll follow up with your inquiries that didn't book. It'll reach out to the guest that stayed with you like 9 months later, take something that it learned from the conversation about their stay, and it'll be like, I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving last year. We'd love to have you back for Thanksgiving again this year. If you want to book, like be sure to let me know, and like try to get you repeat bookings that way. Like it's really, really sick.
That is unbelievable. We'll link your YouTube videos below on it and a
Yeah.
link to it. I'm excited about checking it out myself because,
Yeah.
like I said, I'd only seen it in one other tool, and this is definitely something that seems like it's not going away
Yeah.
and rather be on the front end than the back end of it. So that is
Yeah.
really, really cool. I want to talk more about, I guess, just management operations in general. From a high level, could you just tell us what maybe the property management business looked like when it was at its height or at the time that you sold your portion of it? Just maybe we could dig into that a little bit more then too.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had about 35 properties at the peak of it. And then we had basically me doing like kind of relationship management with the customers, and then biz dev, like going out and getting new property owners to work with. We had my business partner doing all of the operations. So he was the one basically on the whole guest side of things. We had one cleaner, which like one cleaning team, I should say. They were like I think a 5-person cleaning team, and they kind of scaled up in the high season and down in the low season. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would do it differently if I were to do it over and have at least two, just so you have like a little bit more diversification. You're not like so reliant on that one team. And then we had what we called at the time like a gopher. He would just like go for this, go for that. Like he was the kind of general handyman maintenance person. And he'd be the one that was sort of on call for like any guest services needs or any maintenance needs at the property. Um, so that, and then we had one VA that kind of like managed VAs. That was back when we were still hiring from the Philippines. So again, I wouldn't necessarily do it the exact same setup. But we had one VA that was managing VAs, and then like two VAs that were kind of like one step below her. So she would create a lot of the documentation and kind of train them up and whatnot. And they were just purely doing guest communication, and then they would relay anything that needed to be relayed to my business partner, to him, and he would do kind of the triaging work.
Got it.
And that was pretty much the setup as far as team was concerned.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Is there anything you mentioned the cleaners? Is there anything that like you look back on that you either learned along the way that you would have done differently from the beginning, or that you look at now that you would have even done differently, from what you know now to the end of when you were doing that?
Oh, absolutely. Like almost everything. There's pretty much nothing that we were doing in that business at that time that I wouldn't do differently now. Like uh, guest communication. I mean, if we had AI tools back in the day, that would have been like life changing. But I would say, yeah, not hiring the at that time we were like really trying to just like cut costs as much as we can and be as profitable as possible. And we sacrificed a lot of peace of mind doing that. Like we hired the cheapest VAs we could get, and just paid the price for that. And so I would focus on hiring fewer higher quality people as opposed to more lower quality people. Get the reliability way up. We also tried to implement 24/7 guest communication, which was a big part of the reason we had three people. We would do like three different 8-hour shifts, and that just wasn't necessary. Like I would say that 16 is as a max of what you really need, quite honestly. So and we changed that towards the end of it, but I definitely would have avoided making that mistake. The clean team was a big one. Um, and then, I mean, we made a bunch of different mistakes. Like even just like we onboarded properties way too quickly when we were first getting started, because like I was quite good at sales and could onboard properties, like get the contract signed a lot more quickly than we could like do all the logistics of onboarding them. So one of the issues that came up with that is we just like kind of took our best guess. It turned out I didn't realize we were doing this, but like 6 months later, I learned that we were kind of taking our best guess at what our cleaning fee should be on Airbnb. It turned out that best guess was off, and that didn't matter during high season because we were making so much profit from the property from the management fees that it masked all these losses we had on the cleaning fees. And then low season hit, and we are like, wait a minute, how did our bank balance go down this month when we're charging a 20 like we in theory you shouldn't be able to lose money in a when you're charging a percentage management fee, but then like we lost a couple $1,000s in a month, and I was like, wait, how much are we charging on cleaning fees? Oh, and it's costing us like 50% more than that. Oh dang, okay, we got to fix that. And so like just different stupid stuff like that. I definitely would have grown more slowly, more controlled, more methodical, like do it like a lot more in an organized fashion. There's tons of lessons I learned on pretty much every area of the business throughout the time doing it.
So funny, so good. That could be its own episode. One quick or specific question I guess I have is, let's say someone is listening to this show right now and they have 10 properties. So, with 10
Mm.
properties, it's not a ton of time in quantity, but it's short spurts that things pop up and you just need to be on or available. But there's still so much downtime. A lot of people listening to the show are debating hiring people, hiring a management company, hiring a person, now maybe AI. And what you mentioned there just sort of made me think of this is like they think they need to have 24 hours covered, morning, midday, night, or overnight rather. For someone that let's say has 10 properties now, let's say it's me and you're coaching me and I'm like, James, how many people or a person do I need to run this business if I just want help or I don't want to be, the one having to check my phone all the time? How would you think about that operationally from a person standpoint?
So I think it would depend on the business. Like I'd want to take a look at the business and see what's going on that's taking up the time. I've kind of like for a long time I've operated on a certain hierarchy of how to do things of like eliminate, automate, then outsource. Because a lot of things I realized I would be doing shit that just didn't need to be done in the business. And then if you automate that, you're now just automating a mess. And if you outsource it, now you're paying for a mess. So it's just like not the right way to do it. So I always try to eliminate what I can and see like, is there a way that we can just get rid of this task completely? So like, for example, one of the things we had hired and we had outsourced back in the day was guest services. So like the guest needs more towels, the guest needs like this little thing that didn't like extra bed sheets or something like that. And we should have just eliminated that. We should have just had more supplies at the property. We should have just done a better job of like making sure we knew exactly how many people were coming into listing, leave extra towels, leave extra supplies, have like we had a backup supply closet in each property that we didn't want guests to have access to, but like we should have just had a second one with a more limited supply that guests could have access to. Things like that. So like I think eliminate everything that's possible. then automate it, because the nice thing about software is that it's 100% reliable, never gets tired, never complains. Like you just don't have to worry about it, right? So I would say there's probably a lot in that business with like a 10 property business that you could automate with AI and with different software tools. Like assuming the person was really good at software tools and they had a lot of the main automation set up, I would say let's get AI going for sure, because that takes care of a lot of the like just like the nitpicky stuff, the stuff that you don't want to be doing, you can do with AI. And then from there, I would look to outsource. And I would say like with a business properly set up, if you like weren't doing a bunch of stuff you didn't need to be doing, and you had automated properly with 10 properties, you would need like one really solid portfolio manager working full time. If they're and like maybe one other part-time person depending on the scale, like kind of the scope of what's needed, because obviously if you're managing like 10 condos centrally located downtown, it's quite a bit like less hands-on and less work to do than managing 10 large single family homes that are out in a rural area. So you need like somewhere between 1 to 1.5 full-time people if they were like good. And it wouldn't cost a tremendous amount either. Like you'd be maybe a couple $1,000s a month in team overhead for that.
And when you say full-time person, is that someone who's just an on-call person, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.? Is that something else? What's your definition of a full-time person?
Full-time person being like 40 hours a week, and I would approach it the exact same way that I do with my executive assistant. Is I would go, we're expecting 40 hours a week, and the 40 hours a week is going to be kind of spread out. So I know that's a bit inconvenient because there's not set hours. So to make up for that, I'm really hoping that it's a 30-hour week position. Like I'm really hoping that, and I'm going to do everything I can to help you. And especially when I'm onboarding that person, I'm going to be asking them what's taking up time, what can we do to make things easier. And the goal would be to get them actually working 30 hours a week, but doing it kind of whenever it's needed throughout the week.
Yeah, man, I love that answer. I love how you broke it down, in parts, like the 4 hour work week, Tim Ferriss, model there of putting a person into a bad system is just a disaster, which is
Yeah.
what I would say at least 9 out of 10 people that I talk to, if they're interested in a VA or a bookkeeper or just bringing on an employee, it's like they say, "Oh, I tried it once, it failed." Like, no, it didn't fail. Your system is just jacked. Like you're
Yeah.
bringing
Yeah.
a mess. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned it that way. I'd like to get into just some like nitty gritty op stuff of just how you handle stuff or handled it or would handle it from your co-hosting days. We've had
Mhm.
some really creative or interesting just takes, and would love to hear yours. So I guess the first is um, bad reviews. I've heard different opinions on this. What comes to
Mhm.
mind first when you hear someone leaves a 4-star review or worse, 3 or 4? Anything not 5 is bad. Of what you think about what you do with your own properties or recommend people do with that situation, if they can either get the review removed or get the guests to take it down. Just what comes to mind, and any tips on that.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think a lot of people kind of miss out on a big opportunity with this one. So there's kind of I look at it in a few different kind of buckets. There's like one, what do we do when we've got the bad review? It already happened. And then once we've solved that, there's also like, what do we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Um, and then, with the first bucket, it's like when your bad review comes in, the first thing that everyone should do is say, what can I improve? What can I learn from this? What is the nugget of good takeaway here? And the odd time it does happen that you get a truly just malicious guest, they're just like leaving you a bad review because they want to get a refund or something. But I think way too many hosts these days use that as a crutch, and they just assume that they're perfect. Every single guest is bad. If I got a bad review, it's their fault, not mine. And that's just such a crappy way to look at it, right? Like you're just always going to be stuck if you're looking at it with that mentality. So the first thing is like, how can we improve this? And so a lot of the time it's just either it's like an obvious thing, right? Like they complained about whatever, like there weren't enough blankets, so let's just get more blankets. Or I couldn't use the TV, let's like get better instructions for how to use the TV. And sometimes it's a lot less obvious how to actually improve that. Like sometimes you get the guests that are like, oh, there were bugs. And it's like, well, it's summertime. There's going to be bugs. And it's like, you think that that's just a guest being outrageous, but like, really, you can do stuff about that, right? Like, you can get different bug deterrent stuff. You can get it sprayed for pests. You can even just set expectations better with your guests. Like, put it in your listing description or in your messaging, like, hey, just so you know, it's summertime. We have the place sprayed for bugs every season, and we do our best to keep the bugs down. But just be aware and be prepared that there are going to be bugs, right? Like things like that. So it's always like starts with what can we improve, and then the next thing that you do with that negative review is figure out what to actually do with the review itself. So if it is genuinely an unfair review, it's like a retaliatory review, something that violates Airbnb's policies, like the guest was trying to extort you for a refund, something like that. Absolutely, reach out, get it taken down, and you should have a system for that. And we've got like a whole system we follow to get that done when that happens. And then if it is just a fair review, then respond to it and always be constructive. Don't be emotional with that review response. And the most important key there is fix the issues before you respond, so that in your response you can say, thank you so much for the feedback. We fixed all these issues, so that now when the next guest looks at that, they see that those issues are fixed and they don't need to worry about it. And then the next piece is then like, what do we do to prevent this from happening again? And that's either going to be just like fixing the issues and then we're good, or it could be, let's like not take that type of guest again. Let's like look for anything we could have done to like proactively assess that, hey, this is going to be a bad guest, and not have the bad guest. Or it could be one of those pain in the butt reviews where it's like, it's a 5-star review, but they just give you 4 stars and they don't actually give you anything negative. And that it's like, how do we set better expectations with guests that 5-star reviews are what we want, not 4-star? And so you can like work that into your communication, like your automated communication that goes out. Nowadays, we send people a rating scale at the end of their stay when we ask for the review that says a 5-star review means this, a 4-star review means this, just so it's really clear. Because a lot of people, you'll run into the issue of like, they give you 4 stars because it's equivalent to a 4-star hotel. And that sucks. Like, those are the worst, right? Just because you don't have like breakfast provided to them or some of those amenities that a 5-star hotel would have, now you suffer. So like giving them clarity on exactly how the star rating works on Airbnb is a big part. So I would say that's kind of the general how we deal with any kind of a less than 5-star review in our business.
Love it. One specific area of that I'd like to just get your opinion on, or tactic, is, let's say you have to open a claim, like an air cover claim. Um, let's say you have a golf simulator in your property, and the hitting mat, it has a hole ripped in it, and okay, this is sizable enough. If it's not like a $20 thing, it could be $500. Claim needs to be open. How would you go about submitting that claim, and potentially then navigating, a guest arguing it or disputing it, or leaving then a retaliatory review?
Yeah, so I'm never really worried about a retaliatory review, because Airbnb, like if you have a good system around it, getting retaliatory reviews are very easy to get them removed. Well, not easy, very, very reliable. It's a pain in the butt because you have to go through Airbnb support and you always have to like reach out to 4 different people to get it removed. But it's reliable. Like if you're persistent with it and you have a good process for it, you will get it removed. So I don't worry about that as much. I do worry about the relationship with the guest. If they're a good guest that like just did it by accident, I obviously don't want to burn that relationship with them. And so I'll basically like, we'll just submit the claim with a very nicely worded message explaining what happened and the photos to show like this is what happened. And then if they say like, oh, like we're not going to give compensation for this or whatever it is, we don't bother arguing with them. We'll just say like, okay, you can deny the claim and it'll go through to Airbnb, but we do unfortunately need to charge you because it was you that caused the damage. So like not ceding to them and agreeing at any point, like, oh, maybe you didn't cause damage, but still being polite and cordial about it. And then just going through Airbnb's air cover for that. Yeah, like I find that it can sometimes happen for sure with like larger ticket stuff that people are like, even though they know they did it and they're a good guest, they're like, oh, it just sucks, and they don't want to do it and they want to try to go through air cover. But then what'll happen is that Airbnb will actually charge them, because I had this happen with one of my students where it was like this $2,000 beanbag chair that got too close to the fireplace and then burnt a bit. And so the guests didn't want to pay. They were great guests, like really good guests. The host did a great job with it. And then it went through to Airbnb's air cover, and Airbnb then went and charged the guest for it. So the nice thing there is that Airbnb can be the bad guy as opposed to you as the host being the bad guy. Um, I try to end up in that scenario more than anything. Like, I don't want to be the bad guy in the situation if I can avoid it.
Totally. And I guess in that case, then, if they were to submit a bad review, like they had a good stay, but just after this experience, they get angry and now they're gonna give a 1-star review. Is there any steps or advice you would give to people on, how to make sure or give themselves the best chance to get that taken down from the listing?
Yeah, basically, just go on Google and look up Airbnb retaliatory review policy. Find the link to the policy document. Read through that. Make sure you fully understand that whole policy. And then from there, it's pretty easy to show the clear chain of like in the communication, they were thrilled with their stay. Everything was great. They were super happy. And then we put this claim through. Now they give us a bad review. That is a pretty easy case to plead to Airbnb to say this was a retaliatory review. The only reason they left us a negative review is because we reached out for reimbursement, which per your retaliatory review policy, like that is textbook a retaliatory review. It needs to be taken down. And by somewhere between the 4th to the 10th person that you reach out to at Airbnb, it will succeed. Because the thing with Airbnb support is it's a huge pain. Every single representative is different, and it's totally up to them to decide how to deal with issues like this. So if one person says no, my best advice is don't bother arguing with that person. You will never change their mind. Just let them close the case, reopen a new case. And sometimes you need to change the way that you're wording it. Like, don't just copy and paste the exact wording, because then it'll just attach it to the old case. But just open up a new case, try it again, and then like just be persistent with it, and you'll end up getting through to someone who's like, oh yeah, this is totally just a retaliatory review, and they'll take it down for you.
So
The other thing I'll add though too is that anytime you get a negative review, you also get strikes on your listing. You can see them when you go into your hosting dashboard and look under listing issues. Make sure that the person also takes those listing strikes off your listing, because they can come back to bite you as well. If you get 3 of them, then your listing will get suspended. So yeah, definitely make sure that you get the review taken down, but also make sure you get those listing issues taken down as well.
so good. I love how tactical you are, man. What do you? This is what I should have asked at the beginning. What did you go to college for or study at any point, like in your studies? Just because you are super analytical and process and detail oriented.
Yeah, that's more just like a personality quirk than anything. I'm not like an engineer or anything. I went to school for business and entrepreneurship, and I did like 3 semesters before dropping out of university.
Love it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is specific before we talk about people getting in touch is potential direct bookings or follow up guests. The way you talked about that, I never really even heard someone talk about it in the sense of like thinking about a good guest or a return guest or a relationship. I think people look at it so transactionally with their guests that this is a one and done. If I have to do a claim, it sucks. But even if they have a good experience, I'm never going to see them again. I get the feeling you look at it differently. So can you just talk about how you think about that? And then if you have strategy or steps you take to get repeat business from guests.
Yeah, that's been honestly like a big shift that I've made as we've just gotten more bandwidth to be able to focus on that. So that's what I mean when like I think people like over time hosts are going to get a lot more freed up to focus on like guest experience and guest relationships. Because I used to think of it a lot more transactionally, and I think that was a huge missed opportunity. So yeah, I try to like I want the guests to be happy. Like I think in general, I always want anyone that does business with me to be very happy and feel very good about it. But then taking it a step beyond it and going like, hey, how can we build like a long-term relationship with this? I've honestly been really inspired by one of the students I work with who does this to like the nth degree and does a phenomenal job of it over in New Zealand at this like gorgeous property that he's got. But yeah, for me, like the basic thing that we do is like beyond just like providing a great stay, we have devices at our property called StayFi, and they basically plug right into your internet modem. And then basically the way it works, it creates a Wi-Fi network where when you click to join it on your phone or your computer, it takes you to a splash page. Instead of asking for a passport, it brings you to a splash page where then it asks for the guest's name and email address. And so we collect the contact details of every single guest that stays with us, not just the person that booked. Anyone that goes in the house and uses the Wi-Fi, we've got their contact details, and then we can then remarket to those people and send them to our direct booking website, so that if they were a good guest, we'll keep them on the list. If they're a bad guest, we can just take them off that list. And then we just basically send a monthly email newsletter out to them, highlighting different things going on in the area or different discounts we're running or different stuff like that. And we try to send them to our direct booking website, where we've got slightly lower rates, where they're going to get a better deal. We're also going to make a bit more money because it's not on the platform there, and we don't have as much of a risk of having a bad guest because they're all repeat guests who we know were good guests. So that's kind of the baseline of what we do. We've also got the AI reaching out and following up with them like 9 months after their stay. But that's really the kind of easy, low hanging fruit when it comes to maintaining that relationship and getting some repeat bookings.
I love it, man. That's just so tactical, and people can jump on that immediately. James, I want to talk about your communities now, your content. I'm sure people are listening to this and thinking, this guy knows his stuff. I want to work with this guy, or get access to some of these templates, guides, trainings, etc. So let's talk about that. Tell us what you have going on and what you're planning and how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I still do some kind of more hands-on coaching for property management companies or people that want to start property management companies, as well as for investors, people that want to buy properties on Airbnb. But probably the easiest kind of starting access point is at the kind of early this year, I launched a community called B&B Tribe. It's basically just a community that people can join. It's really low cost, like $49 a month, and it's got some of our like really, really great kind of fundamental training on hosting, and like a lot of these auxiliary trainings on things like the AI tools and SafeI and all kinds of stuff like that. And beyond the training and templates and stuff, it's just a really sick community of, we've got about 140 short-term rental hosts in there, ranging from like investors, managers, just single property hosts, that kind of stuff. And we all connect like once a week on a call. We've got a great community forum. So that's just like, I just wanted to kind of make a space where a bunch of hosts could get together and learn from one another. And it wasn't like a kind of a cesspool the way Facebook groups are, of like lots of bad advice, lots of people just complaining. Like I wanted to make something constructive. And so that's basically what B&B Tribe is.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. And you also have a book you mentioned, and YouTube. But we'll link all of it. But I didn't even know you wrote a book, or writing a book. But the YouTube we talked about before.
Yeah. The YouTube channel is just my name, James Svetec, and I put out a video a week, just basically different Airbnb related content, just trying to be like tactical, helpful, that kind of stuff. And then I previously wrote Airbnb for Dummies with like the Wiley brand, and I had a co-author with that. And then I'm just about to release a new ebook called Airbnb Unlocked, that's going to go a lot more into just like the tactical kind of systems, operations, that kind of side of things. That's really just focused on like helping people to streamline their hosting, save time with it. And then there's also some kind of optimization stuff in there for just like pricing optimization, revenue optimization.
So good, man. We'll link everything, but I just, even for me listening to this, there are so many interesting things that I have not heard other people talk about. So just awesome to come across someone that curates information from many different places, tests it, thinks about it, implements it, figures out what doesn't work, and can just kind of be like a vessel for a lot of different tactics and tools. So really appreciate you coming on, man. Look forward to doing more with you. And we might need to do a part two, deep diving some of these specifics. I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback, but just want to say thanks, man. You crushed it, and look forward to doing another link sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. And thanks again for having me on.
You got it. Thanks, James.